That's so sad. I'm not live. Oh no, I've been talking to myself for a while, guys. Dude, I've actually been reading the chapter for 4 or 5 pages. That's so sad. Okay, let's redo it from the top. I broke down every page in excruciating detail for up until this point when I realized I was not live. So I am a bit devastated, but we're gonna do it again from the top. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the stream. I'm sorry for the late start. I have been streaming to myself for 20 minutes. Um, OBS told me that I was streaming, but apparently I was not. I'm wondering if I was streaming to the wrong channel or what it was. But yeah, I hope that some of y'all are still with me. Um, we're gonna be getting right into this without delay. Welcome to the stream. I'm happy to see a few familiar faces in chat. Sanwan and Dex, thank you very much for joining me. This is gonna be a bit of a more negative chapter, especially now that I have to talk about it twice. I had the longest rant to Harold about myself, but maybe I can make it more succinct now. We're gonna start with the cover page as usual, 1168 Elbaf Snow. So the point I was making earlier was this thing is so freaking cute. Um, we've got Hachi with 6 shovels, and I'm wondering if he kind of used them like his 6 sword style in Arlong Park and did all the same moves. Hey, Sanwan, how are you doing? So I was wondering if he was doing all like the same moves from Arlong Park to clear the driveway of snow for these adorable little sheep here. It's really cool to get away from the Straw Hats being the only people who can star in these cover spreads. I'm like delighted to see characters like Hachi again because I actually have a lot of fun memories from Hachi. Um, I've told this story before, but when I was younger, say 13, 14, I was trying to get my whole family into One Piece. And I remember showing my mom episode 1. And she was like, man, this is too childish. I can't watch this crap. So I put on episode like 356 or something, where Hachi gets shot by the World Noble. And she was so depressed. She actually cried, and she never watched another One Piece episode again. So Hachi's got a pretty special place in my heart because of that little anecdote. It's always great to see him pop up, especially because he's rocking his takoyaki merch, like I'm rocking my Fiso merch. You can buy this Fiso hoodie nowhere. Um, maybe one day. But yeah, it looks. I think Oda picked this particular spread, this particular suggestion, just because the winter vibes. It's super cozy, and we've got this pretty intricate friggin' cottage with like a Triforce window formation, along with a big door for them to go through. It's a unique design, but yeah, I wonder if these gloves are made of wool, the ones that they're giving to thank him, because that's kind of like giving your skin to someone, isn't it? Kind of sad to see him with shovels, considering what happens this chapter. Yeah, that is a good point. Elbaf snow, and we've got snow on the cover. It is kind of sad, but I got my little sister in by the live action. Yeah, I don't know how many people are gonna stay with One Piece after the live action, make the transition, because it is very different. Luffy in particular is quite different, characterization wise. Um, I'm also wondering how many people are gonna be able to make the transition to the more zany stuff that happens later. I'm curious to see what season 2 will be like for not us fans, but for more casual people. A fun gimmick. That's probably a good way to describe it. So yeah, we've covered the cover story again. I don't want to, because I felt like I made quite a few good points on the first 20 minutes I've been streaming. So I don't want to rocket through the 24 pages which I did before. No, not 24 pages. The 24 minutes I did before, but I'm gonna try and be a bit more succinct. But yeah, super cozy page. Um, Honestly, the Oda note this week is a bit. He always just talks about food, you know? He talks about food or something he's promoting, and that's it. I feel like Oda hasn't had a super interesting um, author note since like Naruto ended and he threw mad shade at Jump. Um, like these things are. Well, I guess he's had some nice thank yous and recommending of his past assistants' work and stuff like that. But yeah, wow, there's a lot of names here. That's crazy. Okay, 15 years ago, that same year, all over the world. So this is super weird. Chapters do not normally start like this. Whoa, heart eyes. Chapters do not normally start like this. They Well, I'm referring like okay, obviously they often start with info boxes, but that same year in brackets. Oda doesn't normally do that at the start of a chapter. It's usually a mid-chapter thing. Like we're having a scene, and if before we've been bouncing around from year to year, and this time the scene change doesn't do that, he'll add that same year. And we saw that show up at least twice last chapter. And it almost makes me feel like this page was not meant to be part of this chapter. It almost makes me feel like this page was intended for last chapter. Um, or that Oda basically sacrificed um sacrificed the reading experience of Jump for the reading experience in the volumes. Um which he's not technically meant to do. We know that thingamabob. We know that I think it was like 14, 15 years ago now. There was like a Jump Festa, and they were asking the voice acting cast a bunch of questions. And I believe one of the voice actors might have been Tanaka, but I can't honestly I can't remember which one. Was asked like, "What do you think of what's currently happening?" And they were like, "Oh, I haven't caught up yet because I read in the tankobons." and, and like immediately they're like, "Oh, but reading in Jump is very valid too, and is a great way of experiencing it because I'm pretty sure Shueisha wants people to read weekly." And they want their creators to prioritize the weekly experience just so they sell more magazines. But many, many hardcore fans just wait for the collected editions and won't be caught up until then. So it's kind of funny, but I often think Oda himself prioritizes the volume version. I'm so tired of Harold. Just give me Loki fights. Uh we're in the era of skip piece, Meek. I am pretty sure that if we get a Harold fight, it will just be a big old punch, and then we'll cut away, and then we'll cut back, and it'll be a few lines, and then we'll cut away, and then we'll cut back, and then it'll be a big old punch, and that'll be it. We are in the era of we have big showcases for characters. We have a lot of off screening and we allow the anime janitors to clean it up. Yeah, good old Meek. Thank you guys so much for dropping by. If you would like the stream and share it with whoever you think would be interested, I would super appreciate that. But it's so nice to have. God, it was really hard to talk for the first 20 minutes. Not seeing any, like, comments come in because I would sometimes ask questions, pause for a minute, and then move on. um, because and like that's how I realized that like the stream was not working and I was just talking to myself for 20 minutes because I like the way OBS works. It's hard to describe, but it updates me to the chat on the pending side. So I had just started stream and Dexter immediately wrote, "Let's go." So I thought, okay, it's cool, it's working. So I didn't bother checking. So I just ended up yapping and yapping to myself for a long time. But yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Those giant marines are doing a really good job. They're so reliable. I always thought that they looked scary, but now I wouldn't mind meeting one. Can't you get us stocked up again? Elbaf seafood is super popular, you know? I bet it is. This here is quality Elbaf cedar. It's rare and tricky. It's a rare and tricky import. I'll take it already. So here we've got a bit of art mirroring life, with the Elbaf hype, all over the place. Fun fact here, instead of just seafood, they could also just be saying marine goods. But like that, like maybe that, extends to the cedar that's being imported to make ships and stuff. But given the fact that he's wearing a chef's hat and one of those red scarves which Baby Sanji used to wear, I'm willing to bet that he's just talking about seafood. Thank goodness, thank the gods that friggin' this guy wasn't saying Fishman seafood is really good right now. It's really popular because Brother would be cancelled so fast. But something I got a question is why the friggin' how did they catch friggin' because I assume the marine life around Elbaf is ginormous as well. Who caught it? Like, how jacked is this guy tipping his hat here, going milady? Because honestly, he might be in terms of background characters. You see, I don't like to scale main characters. I've got a bit more pride than that. I scale background characters. And this guy, he's probably a top tier background character, in my honest opinion. Yumit being back was amazing. Yo, I didn't even clock it was Yumit. Yo, that's a really, really good spot. Yeah, right there by the pirate. Well, I thought he was a pirate, but I guess he's a sailor. Anchorhead. Yumit. Yeah, that's a really good call. We obviously saw them during one of the cutaways to Marijua. Well, not Marijua, the red port under it. There's fishmen on Elbaf. I think the guy just brought it off them, I think. Oh, fishermen on Elbaf. Yeah, that's possible. Especially if they stopped at Ida's bar. So if they stopped at Ida's bar, maybe the fishermen barter in there. Maybe it's got two counters, one for alcohol and one for swapping fish. But yeah, I mean, other than that, this first page, these first few panels, it doesn't feel like much was I won't say it's a nothing page, but it was a very light reintroduction to how the state of the world is and that Elbaf's getting more popular. I think that's the real takeaway. Elbaf New World. When we finally become a member nation, Harold! I think we should build sightseeing ships so our people can freely visit all of our allies. Man, this guy, his naivete started off endearing and then transitioned to be frustrating. And by the end of this chapter, it's gonna be enraging. But we'll get there when we get there. Hey, YC, thanks for dropping by. Man, it's really cool to see so many people I know stopping in. Means a lot. Really does. So yeah, we have Harold giving this big old speech and a pretty, pretty dang interesting line. We're actually a rare minority. Someone called Zoro? No, I'm joking, I'm joking. I hate that meme. I genuinely hate it, but, can't resist. It's a pretty funny line. But something I've got a question about all this is why in the, like, is this something the Giants don't know? Because as far as we know, Warland is the only giant country. Like, I know there's others. There's like standalone villages, like where Ida's from and Soul's from and stuff. But like, they should know that there aren't too many giants out there compared to humans and fishmen and other stuff. Well, at least humans, right? So like, maybe he's not telling them something new. Maybe he's acknowledging what they're all thinking here. But let's get back to the speech in progress. We're actually a rare minority from the perspective of the outside world, but there are many nations out there with a wide variety of races coexisting. This is thanks to a culture of mutual respect. Let's join the larger world and make new friends and grow in knowledge together. That sounds great. We're one step away from our future has never been brighter. And we've got oh my god. Okay. Okay. Okay, this is gonna be a bit more negative again, but I feel like if this was 10 years ago, if this was like Fishman Island era Oda, you would have a lot more dissent about all of this. This guy is wiping his nose, smirking, being like, yeah, let's ditch all of this warrior crap, while wearing a Viking helmet, mind you. This guy is probably, 150 years old? He's lived with this culture his whole life. But all of these lemmings are just willing to follow friggin' Harold off this cliff here. And this is very similar to some other situations we've had in the past. The most particular one I'm thinking of is first there's Riku asking everyone to donate more money. That took him bowing on his knees to get people on board. But more importantly, I was thinking of Otohime, who spent years campaigning and pushing for basically the same thing, for fishermen to join with the wider world, but from an even harder position. Because obviously the fishermen were much easier to victimize, especially being so close to Sabodi and the slave auction, and being stuck to Fishman Island. But we saw Oda gradually have people convinced, and she crashed out. She like had that massive speech at the palace, crying and imploring everyone to, that they want a brighter future for the children. And it wasn't until like she went through some pretty, harrowing stuff in front of them to, basically taking a bullet for a celestial dragon and like risking her life by going to Marijua, that she started to get people on board with her petitioning. These guys are just like, yeah, let's go straight away. And I'm just like, what the hell? How are they so happy with this? Like, Elbaf is nowhere in, like, it's not like Elbaf's desperate here. Like, sure, they've had their problems. They're like, they have friggin' issues when it comes to internal squabbling. and all that. But it's not like we saw a beat like this where they were starving and people, donated food and they became more open. But I feel like there is a big difference between, appreciating that other people can help them and there's value to the outside world, and wanting to give up your way of life that you've been living with for 100 years. Where are all the old heads? Where are, like, when we got told about this at the beginning of the arc, it was implied that, like, Harold had to, like, beat other chiefs into submission and negotiate with the elders and all that. And maybe that happened off screen. I think some of it is subtextual because, like, obviously Harold ripped off his horns. That's super hardcore. But what's upsetting me is that we don't get to see the people react to it. If this was 10 years ago, I guarantee we would have had a page be like, did you see what the king did? Oh my goodness. He really means that we should, like, he's really serious about this and blah, blah, blah. I support King Harold, but I don't, blah, blah, blah. Like, there would have been more back and forth. This would have been a more gradual process. But we've gone from 0 to 100 so fast. Let's see what you guys are saying. Hashtag not my Elbaf. Otohime, Odin, Harold all parallel each other. Then Loki being a princess. The princess in need. Yeah, he kind of is the princess in need, especially if you he's kind of similar to Shirahoshi in a way. But we'll park the Shaggy stuff for a while. Otohime is the only one I can respect. Well, Harold has been working on this for over 90 years by that point. Absolutely true, I see, but I don't actually have an issue with it timeline-wise. I've just got an issue with it presentation-wise. I feel like this is a key thing for the anime to fillerize a bit, have a bit more reaction from the giants. Probably the reason I'm coldest on this is because we just spent 10 chapters in Rock's piece, where Rox was the main character, and we haven't touched Harold's story in a while. So I feel like he's too easily swayed everyone over to his side. I have to go. Maybe I'll come back in a bit. No problem, Sanwan. If you've got your question, you can drop it in chat whenever you want. Are there multicultural societies out there other than Totoland? Jeez, man. Is Big Mom actually the most diverse person? It might be. It might be. I suppose modern Skypiea has the Shandians and the Skypians. So that's kind of pathetic. That's just two. God, I'm going island by island. Arabasta was a human fest. Skypiea I just covered. Oh no. Thriller Bark isn't a location that you like. It's not society. Sabodi, I guess, is diverse, but for all the wrong reasons. Oh, this is pretty bleak. I don't think Harold has been out to the outside world too much. Oh god. Is there no diverse society other than Big Mom? That's sad. If anyone can think of one. Wano is cut off. Dressrosa is another human fest with a bunch of, visitors in a coliseum. And, friggin' the Tontata live in secrecy. Friggin' Germa is just a nation of clones. Walter 7 is a human fest. This is a depressing point, like, realization. Harold doesn't touch Cross, confirmed. I think Harold loves the idea of the world government more than he loves the actual world government. I'll make it happen, Ida. Okay. Let's get to the sad stuff. Walrus School. This is all thanks to you, Soul. Better sharp kids than sharp blades, huh? I'd love to take credit for that line, but I'm pretty sure someone else wrote that, and that's pretty cool wording. Um, Big shout out to the three translators on this, Mighty, Meek, and Misumi. Really cool job. Um, but ain't you afraid you lost something here, Harold? If even Soul has come to appreciate Elbaf when he was complaining about them in the Robin flashback. I don't believe military power is what makes a country strong anymore. It's cause of Ida. She taught me everything. Keep yapping, bro. Keep yapping. Meeting her was the greatest blessing of my life. Fun fact: this was actually thingy. This was actually treasure in Japanese. But I think blessing is a better substitute in English. Ida. So we've got our first romanization of the chapter. Nothing too controversial there. Um, I have no idea what the text under it says, but I presume it's like beloved mother and bartender. Hey Harold. This is basically a very similar cultage to the cover page, you know? Hey Harold. Treasure makes her sound like an object. Yeah, and also like in English we generally say like we treasure something, or something like that. Like I treasured meeting her. But saying that she is my treasure, like you can say that about maybe your kids or something, but it's weird to say that about an event. That's probably the biggest, it'd be weird to be like my job is like getting my job was the best treasure in my life. You can say, "Oh, I treasure my job," or my work time. Like who would say that? But like my me time is my treasure. But saying X, doing X is my treasure is a bit awkward, and it's too possessive. Yeah, yeah, especially. Yeah, I think that's probably true as a negative connotation. Um. Okay, zooming right ahead. Elbaf has really changed a lot. When I first came here, there was a ton of internal conflict. It was scary. But you've really changed everything. Now children can laugh and study instead. It's a totally different country. The old customs, our backwards traditions, all those bad practices from the warrior era will be thrown away. Oh, but I kind of liked the whole warrior's pride part. It's really cool. You should cherish your culture. Okay. Part one of the Harold rant is gonna commence. Before, we didn't know too much about Ida's stance. We knew she was cool to. She was angry at Elbaf for, having so many brutes go out there and give all giants a bad name. And that happens a lot, if someone like in a community does something bad, it reflects badly on all of you. It shouldn't, but that's how racism works. So she chastises Harold about, being so beast like and, controlling himself. Outside of that, she hasn't commented too much on Elbaf culture. She seems pretty accepting that she can't marry and content to man the bar. Um, and up until now, you could have assumed that maybe she looked down on a lot of the aspects of Elbaf culture. And Harold, was just completely swept away and didn't think of the ramifications of such a quick change. But here, it's made very clear that she appreciates the warrior's pride part, which is the part which we had illustrated most to us by Dorian Broggy back in Little Garden. And this is infuriating because it just basically means that this man did not listen to a word this woman said. I learned everything from her. She told me everything. Like, are you kidding me, bro? She's literally telling you she doesn't think that the warrior's pride thing is bad. And I lament this so much because I feel like there was so much storytelling potential. I feel like maybe we don't see Dorian Broggy come back, but could you imagine if like we had a scene of them in the bar when we first see Shanks there, and they're like, "Man, this is not our Elbaf." After 100 years, Where are all the people training? Where are you know, like there could be arguments, like, they say it's useless, but there's nothing wrong with, getting in shape and having discipline and self-defense and having honor and blah 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 blah. And we know that Harold is misguided because his moral compass is literally telling him, hey, the warrior's pride part is okay. And if Harold had a shred of this pride, he wouldn't have fallen into the trap he does later. It's just absolutely infuriating. It's so infuriating to me. Because he's thrown the baby out with the bathwater. There are things about Elbaf which suck, and those things which he's complaining about, the illegitimate stuff, the you can't get married to noble stuff, all the superstitions which Estrid believed in, the constant fighting amongst themselves, the pillaging of other people. He could have reformed that stuff and left it there and be a more minimalist reformer, but he isn't doing this for Ida. That's the truth of it. He's doing this for himself. He feels slighted that he's trapped by the system, and so he feels like the need of dismantling it. He's basically doing a Henry VIII, I'm forming the Church of Elbaf so I can have 6 wives. Only not really. But, in fact, that's what he should have done. He should have been like, I am king, screw the rules. But he's doing the worst kind of compromise, where, he's willing to bend over for the traditions which he shouldn't, and ditch the traditions he shouldn't. Scandinavians rise up. We kick Harold out. Not my fictional Scandinavia. I like how misguided Harold was. Yeah, I kind of enjoy it as a character flaw, but it is, we'll see how it goes. Don't you get it, Ida? That very culture is what kept us from marrying. I can't accept it. Hee. Okay, this is where I got to when my stream died last time. Well, when I realized I wasn't streaming. Hee. You always said you wanted to make me your lawful wife. Cough, cough. I don't know why I said cough there. That really is the sweetest thing. You're so cute. That's what she always says about her boys. What's about Loki? He'll always be Harden's kid brother, won't he? In my heart, I've always thought of him like that. Okay, so this line was complicated. It's kind of out of nowhere, this asking about Loki, and I've had a lot of conversations with various people about this. And at first, what I thought this was a complete topic change. I thought she was going to be like, what about Loki? I'm worried about him. And Harold is like, he'll always be Harden's kid brother to you, right? And then she confirms, yeah, I worry about him just like a son. But what I think is actually happening here is Ida, because there is no actual topic change in Japanese. Um, she's saying like, you've said you want to make me a lawful wife. That's really sweet. But what about Loki? Like implying that Loki might be upset because this might be making him, second in line if Harden is legitimized. And Harold saying he'll always be Harden's kid brother, won't he? I don't think that's a slight at Loki, like, oh, he's always going to be second in line because Harden's the older brother. I think it's probably like, oh, he's always a bit of a troublemaker, like, he's got an inferiority complex about them too, but he's still part of the family. I think that's the vibe here, and the two parents are laughing about their tantruming teenager, basically. I think that's what we're meant to glean. But I'm super curious about what Viz does, because there was 2 competing readings of this, and yeah, I think this is probably the most valid option, but it is sometimes very hard to parse what is being implied because things are so contextual. My breaking point was the throne room regarding Harold's flaws. Yeah, we'll get there. Feelings like that keep my heart full. It's what's kept me going all this time. But don't worry, it's okay. You're everybody's king, Harold. Missing a comma. Dex, you're fired. How can you not have a king and then comma Harold? It's just bad, bad, bad practice. God. Anyway, feelings like that keep my heart full. The Japanese for this was I believe it was like feelings like this is what keeps me like eating rice bowl after rice bowl or something like that. And I think it's an idiom. I looked into it and basically just like eating rice bowl after rice bowl basically means um you're staying alive because you're eating. And we obviously don't have an expression like that, so I just think that filling your heart is probably the best way to go. But if anyone has a good way of phrasing that, let me know. I'm very curious what Viz does here as well. They usually try and find an equivalent idiom. I like the approach of trying that, but I also think it might just be best to just spell out what it's trying to say. Because when you hear an idiom like kick the bucket, you don't actually think of what that means. You just know what it means instinctively. So while it would be nice to have a equivalent, if it's not possible, I don't think too much flavor is lost. But it's debatable. And you're almost there, right? That's right, Ida. It won't be long. Soon we'll be connected to the whole world. Our world will be tens of thousands of times bigger. Then we can go traveling together, just like the old days. That sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to it. Me too. Okay, I'm gonna get sad in a minute, but one more point of anger. What kept you two from traveling this whole time? She couldn't live in the castle. That's it. She could have lived in your boat, which you lived in 24/7, working out of a suitcase. You could have traveled together all this time. Why didn't you? Why? Like, is it because you were raising a kid and you don't think a ship is a suitable place to raise Howard in? Like, you don't want to leave Loki behind? If they said that, that would have been a top tier moment. Back here when they're talking about Loki, if it's revealed that that's why, like, she sacrificed traveling with Harold all these years because she knew Loki needed a mother. But that's just me fanficking because there's no explanation. So this would be reading very hard into subtext. At the moment, it just seems like they've lost 90 years of their lives because they've wanted to travel together and just never did. I don't get it. I don't get it. Heavy snow in Elbaf when Loki is sad for the second time, which, in my honest opinion, hints at him paralleling Shurahoshi even more. I don't want to unpack the Mosa Shaggy thing. I don't want to unpack it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm content to wait on the Shaggy stuff, but so Harold leaves the tent just in time for Harden to arrive back to miss his mother dying. That's man. It's just it's sad. It is sad. Um, the fact that she went from alive to Blair in just one panel like this. We've got the rare no text page here and snow covering the whole world has gone cold for her. I can't believe they didn't let Loki out of jail to say goodbye to his mom. That's kind of crappy of them. I would hold a massive grudge. We've got the doctor standing outside. I feel like he should have broken the news to Hardin, but whatever. Um, it's a pretty stoic death scene. It's crazy to me that she dies with a smile on her face, whereas our last two D clan members didn't. With Rox and Cobra. Oda has completely broken the pattern. So maybe it's just a flashback hero thing. But yeah, I liked Ida quite a bit, so it's pretty sad. But I don't know. Oh, you're back, Son One. Welcome. Yeah, let's go to the next scene because I think this is probably the most exciting part of the chapter. We got the juicy tidbit. Shanks is missing? 14 years ago, the Holy Land of Merijua. Indeed, had he completed his last mission, he would have been formally knighted. As you were our next choice, that opportunity now falls to you. What will you do? I'll naturally accept the honor of being one of God's knights. Doing that will secure Elbaf's membership status. Yeah, Shanks missing is super interesting after last chapter. So he was only with the Holy Knights for a year. Um, so I guess Uta and his crew they chilled somewhere for a year waiting for him. Ben Beckman was his childminder for the whole year. Um, now I have to comment on the translation. Why did you kill Alfine? I don't know. So Shanks being missing is a bit weird now. He still has the mark at this point. Yeah, and I saw people being like, this is 2 years before he loses the arm. Um, Dex, what I think is happening is that the deep sea contract is the one that allows the summoning and the control and all that. I think the shallow sea contract is just a tattoo. But maybe it's got more, and that's why Shanks's arm had to be cut off, and conspiracy piece. But Harold does not react to the tattoo he got last chapter. He's just like, oh, neat, a cool new tattoo. But in this chapter, he's like, holy crap, this has changed my life. I feel the power surging in me. I'm gonna explode. You're immortal now. Congratulations. Start carving your membership um magic circle. It's possible that the shallow sea contract just doesn't have that level of commitment. We certainly know that it doesn't come with immortality. You may be right. I took it as a way for Emu to observe those who have it due to the next page. Yeah, I mean that's possible, but we don't like we've had three Godsteel devotees in the series. Gonko, who went on to be knighted, Gunko, who went on to be knighted, Shanks, who bailed, and Harold, who went on to be knighted. So it's not like we can really tell. Okay, I've got something to talk about with this. While we're here, when Saturn dies and becomes a skeleton, I've seen a lot of people think that Emu, cause of all this, is just able to smite whoever has a tattoo. And so they always have to be careful because Emu could just kill you whenever. I don't think that's what happens here. I'm pretty sure that these guys are just so old that the only thing keeping them alive is Emu's power. So the second he retracts it, Saturn's age caught up with him, and he aged instantly and decayed. I don't think Emu can just kill from a distance with these marks. So I think a lot of the assumptions people have made is just wrong. I don't think Shadow Contract gets you air tagged. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement. Um, Maybe it's got some bearing, like, but I think it's literally just you are in training. Maybe there's some purpose to getting the arm cut off, but I would rather believe that Shanks just genuinely lost his arm. We'll see though. We'll see. Um, but yeah, Shanks going missing during a mission is I kind of wish we didn't get this line because I was enjoying the Shanks speculation. Shanks was only in the God's Knights for a year. I wonder why it was necessary for him to do that. Um, to recap the Shanks timeline, 38 years ago, he was found by Roger and co. Obviously, we don't know what happened until he was 13. Maybe he was raised by Roger and co, or maybe they just dropped him off and picked him up when he was older. I'm pretty sure they only picked up Buggy so that Shanks would have a friend his age. But they travel together. They can't go to the final island because Buggy gets sick. And Roger's execution happens 24 years ago. And that's where Shanks and Buggy have their big breakup. Um, Buggy being upset that Shanks has no intention of going for the One Piece and being Pirate King because Buggy always felt that Shanks was earmarked to be the successor, and he feels like that was spitting in Roger's face. But Shanks obviously knew stuff Buggy didn't, and didn't tell him because good men don't talk to each other in this series. Um, so yeah, they have their breakup 24 years ago, and only 2 years later, in Chapter Zero, we have Shanks rocking up to recruit Yasop. And assumably that's for the pirate crew, especially if you factor in film Red and all that with Uta, because they pick up Uta 19 years ago. Um, so this is our timeline again. 24 years ago, Roger dies. 22 years ago, forms a crew. 19 years ago, gets a daughter. And this is our next timeline point. 15 years ago, joins the God's Knights. So after 7 years of pirating and 4 years of fathering, he disappears for a year. Um, really wasting a whole year of his daughter's life if you think about it. Um, and what triggered this, the only thing I can think of is the Blackbeard attack. But what about Blackbeard made Shanks feel like he had to give a year of his life to serving the world nobles? I have to assume that he didn't actually genuinely feel like he wanted to check out his heritage and ditched his crew for a year because they would never take him back. So he had a mission here, and determining what it is probably the most interesting mystery of this chapter because it only took a year, and he went missing the moment he could get away from Mary Joa and go on a mission. I am wondering, man, it's tough. It is tough. Does anyone have any thoughts on what Shanks's reason would be for infiltrating the Gods Knights? Because he doesn't do anything with that information, and it's not like it's information like was it to free Fisher Tiger and all those slaves? I don't think so. I think he just did that while he was there. Um, did he need to confirm something about his origin? About Teach's origin, maybe. I'm thinking it has something to do with the Gomu Gomu. So yeah, that's the next timeline point. Someone is 13 years ago. So the year after this, Shanks gets the Gomu Gomu fruit, and then the year after that, he meets Luffy, which is that's pretty sus timing actually. Like he waits a whole year. Sorry, when I type, my avatar will go crazy. Yeah, it is 13 years ago. 13 years ago, the Gomu Gomu fruit is stolen from Who's Who. Shanks goes from did he go from island to island grooming kids looking for the next Nika? Is he did he go down the list and be like, okay, let's check if frigging Garp's grandkid has what it takes? Not really. He's kind of lame. No, okay, obviously Luffy's the one he settled with. So did he go down the list and was he like, okay, let's check out friggin' Suru's grandchild and see if she's good, any good? Okay, probably not. Let's check Garp's grandkid, and or because the way it's shown in chapter 1. Don't use this website, kids. This is an illegal website. If you use this, the Viz overlords will execute you. But this is a very special stream, so I've been given special that's not a word. I've been given special permission to just look this up real quick as a community service. Okay, there's nothing wrong about this. Just completely nothing wrong at all. This is all part of the plan. But it's so late in the chapter, jeez. It's not here. The gum gum fruit we took from that enemy ship. Luffy, you didn't eat this, did you? They took it to the bar with them. I figured that this was them celebrating stealing the Gomu fruit from Who's Who initially, or whoever it was when this was first written. And that's why they have the treasure with them. Like they're celebrating and checking out the loot and, looking things up. Which is why he has the friggin', image of the fruit ready to go, because he's they probably researched it a lot before they stole it. But this is a year later. They take it off the ship for what reason? Because they just don't let it leave their sights because it's so important? It is suspicious. It's weird. It's weird that it takes a whole year for some. It's weird. It's weird. I think it's somewhat related to what Roger told him before they disbanded. I don't know. To me, it just kind of comes back to the whole no devil fruit cruise. Look at the first page. There's a cow. I wonder what deep symbolism there is of this cow. Wow, there is a cow. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled ranting. Harold has the opportunity to stomp on all of the friggin' Korase here, who are barely 3 of them are his foot. Congratulations, the Great One has agreed to put his trust in you. It's been a long process. You'll be remembered as a king who brought great change to Elbaf. Well, to be honest, when Elbaf finally joins the world government, I plan to relinquish the throne, he says while looking at a throne that should have been relinquished. Quite ironic dialogue, Oda. A younger, more virtuous ruler than I should take over. That is a matter for Mu to decide. Why is there someone on the empty throne? Or actually, the void throne, as we all know. Why is there someone on the void throne? The wind is blowing from the east in chapter 1. It's because of Dragon, obviously. Cowpiece is real. Come, Mu has been watching thee, Harold. And we have the insignia, which is just adding horns to the You see, it's kind of ironic. Harold rids himself of his natural horns, which is a move which I to this day am grumpy about. because I feel like self-mutilation for the sake of others is just terrible, terrible messaging. Um, Even though like I appreciate his dedication, but he is being used. But yeah, he gets rid of his horns and gets a replacement set. It's kind of ironic from a true demon this time. His horns were just part of who he was, but these horns are from the literal devil. I suppose you could think it was a mustache or a ship or something, but I'm pretty sure these are horns. And yeah. Okay, so him being surprised is BS. His best friend told him everything before he died. Uh, did he? Did he though? Because we talked about this last chapter. I don't think Zebek, for whatever reason, divulged anything about Emu. I think he's just like, the world government sucks, bro. Haven't you seen all the crap they do? They hold on to absolute power, blah, 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 blah. I don't think he ever got into the weeds and was like, look, the day we met. The day they met. If it was me, I would be yapping all the way down to the red line because they jump off together, right? The day they met, Harold, like, Zebek had just escaped from this guy, Emu. And he doesn't mention it to the guy he escapes with, or mention it for the next 20 years. By trying to remove who he is, he ended up becoming exactly who he didn't want to become. Beautiful way of saying that, someone. Beautiful. And another thing is that, with Rox, he was honest with Harold. He was like, look, I want to use you. I want to use your strength. I want to make myself king and make things better. What's insidious about this is that, they're not honest. They're not saying, they don't lead with what they want. They lead with what Harold wants. Oh, this is what you, like, what will you choose? This has been a long process for you. Congratulations. Your dearest wish shall finally be granted if you blah 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 blah. Like this, like the way they've like framed it is that all of this is Harold getting what he wants, and in a way it is. But what makes these guys the villains and not Rox is that while they both wanted to use Harold's strength, these guys were like, they were clear about it to a point, but they weren't clear that they wanted him to use not just his strength, but his control of the giants. And he wanted they like, at least Rox told him, look, I want all the warriors, I want the Garly Law Company, I want to overturn the world, and blah blah blah. This power, it's surging within me. And we've got a bit of sketch piece going on here. As I'm sure most of you know, this chapter was not finished in time, which is crazy because they're usually, I think, like 3 or 4 chapters ahead. So the fact that this chapter went to print without it being ready means that like Oda is quite behind on finalizing some things. But I generally don't mind this because I kind of see the Jump version as a beta release. Many mistakes and typos and imprecise dialogue get caught and fixed up for the volumes. And sometimes the sketchy art actually looks better. Or not better, but more fitting for the scene. And I think in this scene where the power is literally bursting out of him, or in the Kuma scene in the church, having a bit of a sketchier art style does feel right. So if we had to have a page incomplete, I'm glad it was this one. This is the power of immortality. It still sends shivers down the spine. He is beyond any wild monster. he has been forged into a mighty weapon, they say while panning to all the other collection of weapons Emu has amassed, each one representing a different nation which he has dominated. And this is probably the crown jewel in their eyes, right? Because what is a nation but the sum of its people? And when you're giants, the sum of those people is probably the most unstoppable nation. So this would be the greatest sword in Emu's little arsenal here in the top panel. Oda doesn't do the whole sending the chapter weeks earlier. I'm not sure. I think you would have to for certain reasons, but it's possible that he doesn't do as many because he's so tenured. And he also gets a break week every now and again. You kind of F with the sketches not being removed until removed, but it's no fun cleaning it. Yeah, I bet not. By the way, I just want to talk about the scale here. The scaling is all over the place. Friggin' this, right? The four Gorosei don't even go halfway up his boot. Okay? The five Gorosei don't go halfway up his boot. But in this panel, they're friggin' up to his kneecaps, which is ludicrous. They grow like triple the size between panels. But even more insane, one, how big is this room that Emu towers over Harold? Like, it probably wouldn't be as intimidating for. Like, this is nowhere near as intimidating as compared for Cobra, right? Because Cobra is way down here, looking like Cobra's neck must have really hurt, going like looking way up in the air. Uh, here, Harold, like it would be kind of. He's kind of like looking at a tiny little person, but he's still elevated from his perspective. So I can get why he's still intimidated and like creeped out by this. But the scale of it just completely throws me off because like I feel Oda did this just so Harold wouldn't need to look down on Emu because Emu's the one in the position of power. But it makes this whole scene, it makes the whole scale of this room mind-boggling. Like whoever the architect was who commissioned this, it's like, okay, just in case we need to aura farm against a giant, can you make this as bigger than any giant who's ever been? And even then you can't see the rooftop. Even then we're not even halfway to the roof. Like, you think all the extra swords on the plateau is from every king who joined after? Yeah, I think so. I think each member of the world government leaves an extra sword. Although we can't see how many there are, and there's around 200 nations in the world government. But I think Emu has a collection. I think that's what the other swords represent on the lower levels. And obviously, the higher the level goes, the more tenured they are in the world government. You can tell Oda read a bit of Game of Thrones, by the way, because this is very much the Iron Throne, which was made out of a collection of swords. This is quite a similar idea, only the swords surround the throne, which is pretty cool. I kind of want Emu's fighting style to be using these swords. Maybe not as a swordsman, but maybe he can like grab them at some points. Luffy or someone destroying the sword collection would be a great moment near the end of the series. In fact, I'm pretty sure like the final fight will have Luffy smashing the throne down into the bedrock, but 200 sword style. Okay. Consider thyself an immortal knight sworn to Mu. Immortal? I can't believe it. Crave an abyss pentagram in Elbaf. That will mark the bond between us. Has this is terrible onboarding, but does he know what an abyss pentagram is? Did they Was he told between this scene and that scene where he gets upgraded? Like, this is how we transport, this is how the deep sea contract works? Or did he know before when he was a devotee? Like, did he have to carve a pentagram in other places? They just kind of take it for granted that he knows what this is. And I'm assuming it's off panel. But thy dearest wish shall finally be granted. Huzzah! As soon as thy mission is complete, Elbaf will be recognized as a member nation of the world government. Thank you, King Harold. Woo! I like the montage nature of this. It makes it sadder. It's kind of weird how there's still a Jolly Roger on the Elbaf flag, but oh my god, they friggin' spelled Elbaf with an F. These guys. I'm gonna talk about it now, but Elbaf, Elbaf, Elbaf. So the first time, it's such an old friggin' name for a country in the series. Like Elbaf is one of the first countries we get name dropped in the entire manga. But would you believe that it was never romanized once until the big spread we got, where we got to see the massive Yggdrasil, um the tree Adam for the first time. That was the actual first time we got Elbaf spelt, and they used the PH spelling, which is the infamously known as the Viz/4Kid spelling. Funimation always used the F spelling for their subtitles and stuff. Um, and most of the community because they assumed Fable backwards. Now in Japanese, it's not exactly Fable backwards. It is different from what Fable would be. But it's always been a fun little theory, and it is something which I've seen like fans on Japanese forums kick about, like in ancient forms. So like, it's not an unheard of idea. But more than that, just the natural way of like romanizing Elbafu would be with an F. I think most Japanese speakers wouldn't think, PH to make the f sound, because that's a very annoying English weird oddity. So I've always been more with the F spelling. I think it's simpler and cleaner and probably what a Japanese speaker would choose. But we got to this, and I mean, it was a bit of a surprise, but it was just in a graphic form. So I was a bit hesitant to roll with it because these graphics are not done by Oda. They are done by the editorial team. And like if you've ever seen a manuscript page, it's like it marks where the romanization should be put, but it doesn't usually specify what it should be. It just says what it is in Japanese. So I thought that usually what happens is they probably have like a big index of names that they've used before and reference it. So like we usually have them like we had them, and they're usually pretty consistent, especially since the Vivre cards have come out. There's been some weird ones like Pirate of Heart or Low's Crew, which should probably be the Pirates of Hearts. But we've had contradicting ones like Shiryu and Shiryu, but this is super interesting because it's a spelling that matches the English adaptations that's never been in Japan before. And it made me think that maybe they got in contact with Viz or their international partners to determine what it should be because they had no record of it. But that's actually not what happened. If anyone listens to the One Piece podcast, which is a pretty neat podcast, which the translator of Viz sometimes frequents. His name is Stephen. Um, he he sometimes makes an appearance there, and he actually dropped a tidbit about how he has no contact with them when it comes to spellings about some stuff. Like so that's why this was the chapter where we got the Knights of God reveal that it's a God singular. He was talking about how he had to struggle with whether it should be how you should translate out God's knights, because is it one god or is it multiple gods? Are the knights themselves gods or do they serve the gods? And so splitting the difference, he went with Holy Knight, um, just to basically wait and see what it would be, because it was so long before we got an answer. And we finally got a romanization with Knights of God. And he explained that now he has to compromise as Holy Knights of God, which made the graphic in the Viz version much chunkier. But he did drop a really cool tidbit there and said that Greg, who I'm not sure how many of you know about Greg, but Greg is a mega fan who appeared on a One Piece game show a long time ago. He appeared in a show that was editor. Yeah, this is it. He appeared in a show that was editors versus super fans, and he was the only foreigner on the panel, and he was probably the most knowledgeable fan on the panel. Um, and he gave the editors a run for their money and the trivia questions they asked. And they asked some really complicated questions, like name the whole supersonic duck squadron and stuff. Um, like name all of their names. But yeah, Greg through this he appeared twice, and in the second time they had this, the fans won. And Greg obviously got to make some connections with the various editors, and he ended up getting a column in on OnePiece.com, which you can all read, which breaks down the chapters each week with some interesting trivia. It's not always weekly; sometimes it's like monthly, but they're always pretty interesting. I don't agree with everything he says, but I've always like it's really cool that like a fan was able to like come this far. But anyway, the tidbit which Steven dropped was that they don't consult the international adaptations about how to romanize stuff, but they occasionally ask Greg, and he gives them what he thinks the romanizations would be. So that's what I think happened with the Elbaf graphic. I don't want to be conspiracy theorist, but going off what Steven said in the episode of the podcast, um, and this, I think they asked, "Oh, what do the Western fans or Western media use for Elbaf? Because we want to Romanize it here." And he gave them the Viz spelling naturally, and that stuck around for like the next few chapters where they wrote it out as Elbaf with a PH on the flag. But now we've gone back to this chapter where I think, you know, it was less like the memory of this graphic is more in the distance. And so Oda and his team just went with what's more natural to them, which is Elbaf with an F. That's the only explanation I have, because we've had stuff like this before, like Shiryu and Shiryu, like I said, where we've got contradicting romanizations, or Arabasta and Alabasta, but the common factor is that those examples are usually years apart. This is so close in proximity, it's actually unprecedented for the spelling to turn around in such a quick time. In my opinion, I know I've been yapping for a long time. In my opinion, I think it's best to go with Elbaf with an F, simply because it's the most recent spelling. It feels the most intuitive, and I don't think everyone wants to go back and re-edit all their fan subs and all of their like Funimation subs and all of their like manga collection because like friggin' we're so far into LVAF. And I don't know though. I've seen a lot of people embrace the PH spelling. I've seen a lot of people hate on it. I don't think it matters as much as the Arabasta Alabasta spelling because you don't lose any real nuance here. Um, it still like sounds kind of like Fable if you do it backwards. There's no discernible meaning difference between them. With Arabasta and Alabaster, there's like obviously like Alabasta is closer to alabaster, which is a building material used in a lot of ancient civilizations. And with Arabasta, but with Arabasta, you highlight more the Arabian Nights motif, along with the arabesque architecture. And I feel like Baroque and arabesque were meant to be compared. Um, because the villains Baroque works. I mean, I know Baroque is also just secrecy organization, but I think that tie was intentional. Honestly, I think Arabasta and Alabaster was meant to be a double play. Um, we see the R spelling more commonly in Japanese media, and more recently, but I don't fault anyone for using any of these variants because they can't get to write themselves. They use Elbaf with an F one week, Elbaf with a PH the week before. They flip flopped on Arabasta. They flip flop on everything. So I think in the end, the community just needs to go with what makes sense. What is this most likely referencing? Rather than what romanizations we get from Viz or from Oda or from the live action. That's just my 2 cents. I think it's a case by case basis call. It's frustrating, but hey, it is what it is. Sermon over. Sorry for the long, long rant. I hope some of you are still with me. Thy dearest wish shall finally be granted. We've done this bit. So, literally the next page. West Castle, huh? Could you repeat that, Great Emu? It's so funny that they didn't tell him this stuff here so he could go back and have 3 panels to be happy and think his dream has come true. But yeah. Huh? Could you repeat that, Great Emu? After he has already carved the carved the icon. Mobilize the entire nation and form a grand army of warriors. The giant warrior fleet will stand alongside the Marines and serve the world as. Wait, no, hold on. Everything I've done was to free Elbaf from violence. Of course. If anyone still wants to fight, I'll gladly encourage them to enlist in the Marines, but who's the king talking to in there? This clown. This clown. This absolute numpty. This absolute like what a prat. He literally was warned about this at every turn. He was told by Rox the world government are no good. He was told by everyone, you are making a mistake here. You are going too far. Even his wife who got this whole thing started was like, hey, you shouldn't lose your pride. This guy sacrificed his pride to be a pawn. And he is ultimately more gullible than friggin' even Odin. Okay, Odin was tricked to dancing for, what was it, 5 years? Because, like, he was tricked to dancing for 5 years, but at least there was hostages involved, right? Like, he was naive to think that Orochi and Kaido were building ships to leave, which, come on, Odin, how did they get there if not by ship? But he was naive to think that they're building a fleet to leave. He probably should have checked in on that a bit. But at least there were hostages, and Wano was in a bad state, and his hand was kind of forced. Like, him removing them would have cost lives. Harold was never in a bad position. Elbaf was never like, under another person's occupation. It was never too weak to function. There was nothing driving him to do this. But he acts like this comes out of nowhere. Thou vowed to atone for Elbaf's history, even at the cost of becoming a slave. I meant to carry that burden alone. The burden of such history is too great for thee to bear alone. Now hold thy tongue. Thou cannot disobey Mu. Those who enter into a deep sea covenant may gain immortality and power, but it comes at the cost of total obedience. What? And it seems like I actually think Harold's being forced to move here because of his legs slipping in this weird like position. I think he might be drawn towards the circle. I could be wrong. Thou will carry out Mu's orders regardless of thine own will. This isn't good. I'm losing control. They never meant for Elbaf to be part of the fold. Curse that emu. Guards! The plan was always to enslave the warriors of Elbaf. No kidding. No kidding. So Harold tries to grab onto a pillar and says, "Chain me to it, and summon Jarul and my sons." So he's being drawn towards the pillar. At this point, Harold should kill himself. Honestly, I know that's harsh. Maybe he wants to get final words out to explain what's going on to his son and Jarul, but he's inching towards this circle. Disaster is coming up. He should kill himself while he's still like being drawn to it. That should be the order here. But sire, I believe Hardin is still at sea, and Lord Loki, that is. Yeah, they forget the suffix at first. Is still imprisoned after what happened. It's been a year. It's been a year, and all he did was beat up or kill the person who poisoned his mother. The friggin' giants have no friggin' good legal system, or Loki's lawyer sucks. Because that is like absolutely valid in my opinion. Especially in a culture like this. I feel like explaining the guy poisoned my mother. Like he did trash that village, to be fair, but like come on. It's been a year. I can't resist for long. What exactly is this concerning, your majesty? None of that matters. Release him now. Jail, realm of the dead. You're free to go, Loki. Huh? Head to West Castle at once. The king requires your presence. Jarul's house. Something urgent. What's going on? And so we return to where this tale began. The day of the castle massacre. When Elbaf's most beloved king, Harold the Gullible, lost his life. Break next week. History converges. Oh boy. Yo, can you carve this abyssal dynamic pentagram in your living room? Promise it'll be sick. He probably can't even kill himself because he has regen now. Oh, that's a good point. Good point, Dex. Also, I thought about it since the original Japanese on Immortal is or Invincible. Because then why are Garling and Summers aging? Oda doesn't do the whole sending the chapter. Oh no, okay, yeah. Okay, cool. I'm caught up on comments. Regarding the Garling and Summers thing, I think that as you progress up the ranks, your aging is slowed more and more. So I think Gunko was her aging was slowed when she became a knight. But she's still aging, and I think the same is true with Garlink, he still ages, but at a much slower rate than a normal person. And then when you get to Gorosei and the deepest sea, that's when you don't age at all, and you're preserved exactly as you were when you earned the title. I think that's what's happening, but I could be wrong. It could also be something where, like, if you use up more power, then your age shows more. Eternal life. I feel like it's probably connected to the regeneration ability. I don't, because that's what they used for the regeneration too. Um, I was going to say one more thing. Loki doesn't even get a pillow in prison. By the way, he gets a barrel. It's pretty funny. Um, we have come full circle on this flashback, taken like 10 chapters to get back to the start of the chapter, which is funny as anything. I think from Luffy's perspective, he would have gotten a much more Cliff Notes version of Loki's early life up until this point. I think all the extra details we're getting is either. I think it's actually just for our benefit. I think the narrator has cut in here and hijacked Loki's story, and now we're actually getting to it. Um, regarding yes, there was something I wanted to say, but it's completely slipped my mind. I want to get your guys' opinions on what do you think is gonna happen next. We've got a break next week. I think Loki's flashback will be 2 chapters after this. What happens to Harold and then his life afterwards. I think it's possible, but we're cutting it close. So if we do, it'll be the very end of the last chapter of the year. But if we have an extended break period, then no. It's 2, maximum 3 chapters left in this flashback, as far as I'm concerned. Um, in terms of what I think will play out from here, I think Harold will order all the guards to stab him and kill him. But I don't know how Ja Rule ends up like Loki ends up taking the blame. Um, I'm thinking it might be like a Dark Knight situation where like they don't want like the world government to look bad, so Loki has to be the scapegoat. He can be the hero that Elbaf needs, but not the one it deserves. But I don't think that jives with what Ja Rule was saying at the beginning of the arc. So there might be a genuine misunderstanding that happens. Ja Rule, I don't think, has any sinister intent here. Loki is obviously not the bad guy everyone thought he was. I don't know how it's gonna play out, but I'm pretty sure Harold has to be put down. And the guards fail at first. You see, well, what's really crazy is how Ja Rule ends up with the sword in his head, though. Loki's power is really at the crux of this. Knowing what Loki's power is will make everything slot into place. But for this to happen to Harold, who according to friggin' Rocks, he has the biggest destruction potential in the entire series. It's just sad. We never got to see Harold pop off. We never got to see a big display from him. This whole thing, it's not. It feels so like he brought it on himself, you know. Like we don't get even like a cool like Odin style death where he's going to show off how amazing his willpower and endurance is for the sake of you know for the sake of the country. He's messed up here, and all that can happen is that they can minimize the fallout. He should have known better. He was told a million times. I know as the reader we get more information than he does, but I don't know if I'm gonna mourn too much because Harold made a clown of himself, and ultimately, not too much happened in this chapter compared to the last chapter, but I think anything that was following last chapter would have felt a bit lacking to me. I think if you go back to last stream, I was gushing the entire way through. Here, we were just focused on three very important scenes. Really, two important scenes. The establishment of Harold's current status after Ida's death, and Harold being knighted and the consequences. It's just a two-scene chapter, and it feels so light, especially because it's only 15 pages, and no double spreads at all, which is really unusual for Oda. Um, it just feels like this is a transitional chapter. Yeah, thumbnail is on point. Thanks. um, Overall, what did you guys think? What would you give this out of 10? I'm gonna be super harsh here. I'm gonna give the chapter a 5 out of 10. To me, 5 is not bad. 5 is the average. To me, it's an average chapter. Anything below 5 would be below average. But to me, this was a serviceable transition chapter. It didn't have any major reveals. It didn't change my perspective on any of the characters. I am disappointed by how simplistic Harold's whole con was compared to Rox's tragedy. It feels far less. I feel far less sympathy for him, despite how much longer Harold's struggle was, because I feel like he had more agency in this and he threw it away. Um, so while I'm sure whatever follows is going to be really sad, especially for Loki, it's hard for me to think, oh, Harold's, this great figure the way I do Otohime or Odin. I can appreciate his heart is in the right place, but this guy was never the guy. But he had all the potential to be, and that's probably the real tragedy. His tragedy just informs Rox's tragedy because his friend didn't help him. And now Harold, like, he committed himself to the wrong path, and he just keeps walking down it blindly until the end. So to me, he is a clown. To me, he is the worst king we've had so far. Not in terms of, personality or policy, but just in terms of foresight. Um, like Cobra was pretty shrewd. He knew what was going on. He knew he was being set up. Gonfall, he had a side gig as an Uber superhero, but he was also he was also very respectful of the Shandians, um, and wanted to see the conflict end. And got displaced by someone stronger. Like it's nothing he did that brought that about. Um, Friggin', I'm gonna include Iceberg. Iceberg was fooled. You see, that is the case of someone being fooled and manipulated and it paying off completely. Because he had someone in their house, like he had people working undercover for years, and that's why he fell victim for it, right? But like that's completely understandable. Here, Harold was the one instigating everything. Harold went to them. It's not like he was tricked. Harold went to them and asked for this. Other kings. Neptune, I mean, I would have hunted down Vanderdecken and maybe been a bit more public about some things, but Neptune's okay. Riku was completely like manipulated by Dofi, but he was in an absolutely no-win scenario where the whole nation was a hostage and then he was possessed. And then people turned into toys, so he forgot who his allies were. So like Riku was probably the hardest stitched up. Odin, at least, had a reason not to do what he did. Harold pushed for this. So it's the only he's the clown king. Sorry, Buggy, he is the clown king. He's the only one who had all the choice here. And that might make it the most tragic of all of them. You agree with the 5 out of 10? Yeah, preaching to the choir. I think the last thing I'm going to note is that the Estrid, when she got to this front room for the first time, was like the 5-pointed star causes death. And what does Harold do? He carves a 5-pointed star in the room. So, yep, yep. Yeah, I'm gonna be ending the stream now too. Thank you so much for showing up. If anyone has any questions, let me know. Until the next time, I will be friggin' super looking forward to this. We've got a break week, so I think that'll be nice. I can rest my voice and get some sleep. But yeah, I mean, it seems like the flashback's wrapping up, and while this was not the best chapter in the flashback, it was serviceable, and I think there's missed opportunity, but there's nothing wrong with it. I think we got the transitional bones that we needed, and I'm looking forward to finding out the mystery of the Castle Massacre. So I hope you'll join me then, and if you like the stream, please like and share it with people. This has been a really positive experience so far, and I hope to keep going with this, at least on the side while I make other content and stuff. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me and vibing, and until next time, see you.